the Bank of America Racing Challenge Update, sponsored by the American Quarter Horse Association.
After 8 months of regional qualifying races throughout the United States, Canada, Mexico, and Brazil, we're less than a week away from the Bank of America Challenge Championships. On this edition of the Racing Challenge Update, we'll preview the top contenders in the 5 divisions that'll have their championship events coming up on November 7th at Lone Star Park. Hi, I'm Jim Byers, and we're joined by Janet Van Beber, who was the only trainer to win 3 consecutive Challenge Championships, that 400-yard race. We'll talk about this year's edition of that race coming up. But Janet, welcome. Quite an accomplishment to win with 3 different horses 3 years in a row in that championship event.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Let's get some of your expertise, since you have gotten horses ready for these big races in the past. These horses qualify from 17 different racetracks. There were some 50-odd regional challenge races to get horses qualified, so horses are coming from all over the map. What are a couple of the keys to getting horses ready for these races and in analyzing them in trying to narrow down who the contenders are?
I think the American Quarter Horse Association's challenge race program is not unlike the Breeders' Cup Championship. The key thing is to have the horses peaking at the right time, and that's this weekend when the money's down. So what do the trainers do to get their horses to peak? I think that you need to look and see who has the home field advantage, who can come in from a different racetrack and be here in a timely fashion so their horse can be fresh, and see what horse travels well. A lot of horses only do well at their home track, and as a handicapper, it's important to look at that information.
And this year's edition being held at Lone Star Park in Grand Prairie. We are here at Lone Star's sister track, Remington Park in Oklahoma City, shooting this edition of the Racing Challenge Update. And like you mentioned, there's some horses coming from all over the place, and that's true in all of our divisions. And let's talk about some of those, starting first with our first division, and that is the Mariel Distaff for fillies and mares. The powerful stable of Kenny Roberts Sr. is represented in the Distaff by Cartel's Fortune. This 4-year-old filly qualified on May 2nd with a neck victory at Sam Houston Race Park. She brings a record of 7 wins in 13 starts into the Mariel Distaff. Bred in California, but now based in the Northwest, Betrothed brings a 4-race winning streak into Championships night. She won a pair of regional qualifiers for the Distaff. The first of those, the LeBois Distaff Challenge on August 8th. She's one of several members of the James Hansen stable to make the trip to Texas. Another in good form is Sudden Separation, the Prairie Meadows qualifier. She drew away on September 12th to take her 3rd straight added money race. After trying without success to make Ruidoso's major derbies this summer, Visual Magic came alive at Lone Star with wins in a trial and the final of their 400-yard regional challenge. When you talk about the Mariel Distaff this year, Janet, really one mare sort of sticks out, I think, and that would be Betrothed, who has been an absolute monster up in the Northwest.
Absolutely. There's 2 things I like about this mare, and first of all, she qualified in 2 different regions, so she tells us that she is very consistent. The other thing I like are her connections. Her trainer, James Hansen, has been in the game a long time and knows how to travel to different regions and have a horse peak and be at their best.
And Hansen's sons were down at Lone Star Park, and they've been there with their string of horses because not only Betrothed, but some others were able to qualify for championship night.
It is a family operation, and working with my dad and brother, we all have our strong points, and we're all able to focus in on a key part of the operation.
We try and mimic everything that they're gonna see on championship night, is from schooling in the gates to schooling in the paddock. The key for us is just trying to keep every detail as close to the same as what qualified them on their home track.
So Betrothed is a horse that's trying to ship in and win. Another will be Flying Lion, who comes from Sundowns. That's a track up in Washington State and a smaller circuit, but those horses can come in and win as well.
Absolutely. You never know where the next big horse is going to come from. Another thing I really like about Flying Lion is that is sired by Panther Mountain, one of the horses that I happened to win a challenge championship race with.
One final note about the Mariel Distaff. One horse who does have the home track advantage, already won twice at Lone Star this meeting, is Visual Magic, and she should be a contender as well.
Visual Magic has been on fire at Lone Star Park. Having won 2 races over the surface and prevailed in both, we look for that sort of repeat performance Saturday night.
She won the qualifying race to get in and then won the Lone Star Regional Championship as well, so Visual Magic could have that home track advantage, no doubt. Time to take a look at a different division. Let's take a look at 2-year-olds in the John Deere Juvenile Challenge. One of the earliest qualifiers for the 350-yard John Deere Juvenile was Undivided Attention. He took the Sam Houston Regional Challenge by a daylight margin on May 16. Since then, he's competed in the All-American and Dash for Cash trials. From Canada's Panther Hero, a 2-time Futurity winner this year at Ajax Downs. The Ontario-bred not only took his John Deere Juvenile Regional on July 12th, but followed with an Alex Peikoff Futurity win October 5th. From the Hanson stable comes Papa's in the House, a winner of 5 of his first 7 tries, including the Lavoie Regional on August 8th. He's had a race over the Lone Star surface, a 5th in a Dash for Cash trial. Prairie Meadows qualifier Gone All In spotted the leaders a length and a half early, but rallied to win the Juvenile Challenge there on September 12th. He has 4 wins and 3 seconds in 7 starts. Undivided Attention is one of those Texas horses. He qualified back in the spring at Sam Houston Race Park and did it in a very wide margin at the end.
I like the fact that the form said that he drew away in his race final to qualify with a speed index of 94, which is one of the top qualifying speed indexes for this race. And I think it's advantageous to have qualified at Sam Houston Race Park because for a baby, a youngster, a mere kindergartner in human terms, he doesn't have to come so far to be on the grounds and participate.
And hopefully, even though he won, speaking from his standpoint, a few months ago, hopefully he's been able to keep that form and maybe even get a little bit stronger as the year goes by. You always wonder about horses that qualified way back in the spring, how they'll do coming up on November 7th.
And that is particularly tough with babies because they're still in a learning process and you don't want them to get rusty. So that's the challenge as a trainer, to make sure that you have them peaked right now.
Another horse that's interesting in this race is Gone All In. This horse qualified out of Prairie Meadows and did it in a big come-from-behind rally. And with a 2-year-old, I guess on the one hand, it's good to see that they can overcome some obstacles in a slower break. On the other hand, everything is so much geared to speed in this relatively short race that I would imagine you kind of want your horse to get out of there pretty well, too.
It's a little bit concerning because the race is only 350 yards, and when you're in amongst top competition, if you have a tardy break, you can have a tough time overcoming it.
We've got 3 more divisions left to talk about right after this quick timeout on the Racing Challenge Update.
My 40 saved me $500 on this Ford truck.
My 40 gives me a year of good reading.
My 40 makes me a thrifty shopper.
My 40 colors my world.
Your $40 American Quarter Horse Association membership provides hundreds of dollars in benefits and services. To find out what your 40 can do, visit aqha.com.
It's time to take a look at the longer distance horses, the 870-yard specialists in the Zoetis Distance Challenge. On April 11th at Sam Houston Race Park, Dasher's Midnight throttled his opponents by 8 lengths to qualify in an early Zoetis Distance Regional Challenge. This 8-year-old ran second in this race last year. The Texas-bred Just Twice Cash not only led all the way to win Lone Star Park's Regional Distance Challenge October 3rd, but he followed with an 870-yard win a week later. The second victory came at the expense of Dasher's Midnight. Chronologically, the 8th and final Zoetis Distance Challenge qualifier was C.R. Tucker Nuck at Will Rogers Downs October 11th. He seemed to do the impossible, winning despite starting in post position 9. One key factor in analyzing any 870-yard race are the post positions. The race does start very close to the turn, and as we do this, the post positions have not been drawn for Saturday's race, so a little tough to analyze, but C.R. Tuckernuck, one of the top horses in this race, won at Will Rogers Downs from way on the outside, so sometimes horses can't overcome it, but definitely you want to be toward the inside, ideally.
Absolutely. The post position can make or break you in an 870 race. Reason being, the horse on the outside post position theoretically has to travel farther around the racetrack and is at a disadvantage. But as you mentioned, C.R. Tuckernuck has proven to prevail even in this condition and should be one to watch.
C.R. Tuckernuck was a pretty darn good straight running horse a couple of years ago as a 2- and 3-year-old. Stacy Capps has stretched him out. How difficult is that to stretch a horse out? From this horse competed in top competition as a true sprinter and now is going around the turn.
I loved, as a trainer, watching horses that had an affinity for covering some ground. And Stacey has done a good job of identifying that in this athlete. And he obviously loves it. So all the power to her. I think she'll do well.
Just Twice Cash we talked about in the package, another horse that has that home track advantage. I'm kind of curious also to see a horse by the name of Lil Dippa Nitro. Is another horse coming down from the Idaho area, was one of those many qualifiers that came out of there. And this horse is trained by Bill Hoberg, who has a horse in the Classic Championship race as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how some of these horses fare and to see if C.R. Tuckernuck can continue his transition from more of a straight horse to an 870 specialist.
You touched upon home field advantage, and that's an added issue with 870 races because of the placement of the gates when they break. Different racetracks place the gates at different locations going into the turn when you're going 870 yards. And if a horse has raced over the Lone Star surface before and done well, then that tells us that this horse likes going into the turn at that angle. So it's something we should watch for. Dasher's Midnight and Just Twice Cash are both Texas horses.
So that takes care of the Zoetis Distance Challenge. Our next category is the Adequan Derby Challenge. 3-year-olds going in this one at 400 yards. Qualifying began for sophomores in the Derby division on May 16th at Sam Houston Race Park. Drawing away decisively was Jumpin' Streak, a Texas-bred gelding familiar with Derby and Futurity trials. He prepped with a Lone Star Allowance win October 4th. Another Ajax invader is Seize the Win, victorious in the Ontario Adequan Derby Challenge, July 12th. His dam, Jesson Illusion, was produced by AQHA Supreme Racehorse Indigo Illusion. Another who's come a long way for the championships is Why Not Walk. This gelding has won 7 of 15 lifetime starts. He's in the Derby final compliments of a tally in the July 29th regional at LeBois Park. Last year's juvenile winner, AJ's High, enters the Derby with 8 wins and 12 starts and took the Prairie Meadows qualifier October 10th in come-from-behind fashion after being fractious and running 6th in the trial. So AJ's High will try for a repeat win on championship night as he took the juvenile last year. And AJ's High, he's a 3-year-old now, but he looks awfully tough in this spot.
And it's interesting to me that you chose the word tough, because here at Remington Park we saw AJ's High prevail earlier in the year, but if you watched him in the paddock and in the post parade, he was a little tough to get along with. We as horsemen might even say rank. As a gambler, I might be tempted to say, I better stay away from this horse, but then he went on and had a super impressive performance. Jockey Stormy Smith tells me that's just the way he is, and he's still going to throw a good race. So if you're watching Saturday night, see him acting a little bit rank, a little tough to get along with, don't let it scare you away.
I guess if they do it consistently, that's better than if they just suddenly act up out of the blue.
Absolutely.
Another filly to watch for in that Adequan Derby, I think, is Great Grace. She's run some really nice races at Lone Star Park in the past. Trey Wood wins a lot of races down there, and I think she's a filly that certainly on her best day could compete. But the Adequan Derby is an interesting race. It produced a lot of horses last year that are in this year's championship race, and it should come up pretty strong, I would think.
I expect it to be a really good race.
And there's a horse in there from Ajax Downs, Seize the Win, and we bring that up because there's a number of Canadian horses in there. Of course, Ajax Downs outside Toronto. We have some Western Canadian horses in there as well, and you were saying that the speed indexes might not always translate across the international lines.
Well, the deal is the speed index is a formulation that is over a period of time based on other horses that have competed there. So it may not ring true to our American speed indexes, but this horse still had to qualify against some tough competitors, and I applaud them for making the trip down to Lone Star Park to participate in the program.
We'll take a quick time out. When we come back, we're up to the championship division, 3-year-olds and up, going 440 yards, the division that Janet won 3 straight years in. We'll get to that right after this.
I think we're a big family. Like, we all take care of each other. And, you know, just between the horses and the people in the industry, I think it's a great thing.
It's my whole life. It's not really, you know, an option for me anymore. It's just what I am.
It's easy to be proud of the best horse in the world.
We are AQHA proud.
I am AQHA proud.
I am AQHA proud.
I am absolutely 100% AQHA proud.
The richest race in the program is the $350,000 guaranteed Bank of America Challenge Championship. This Grade 1 test at the classic 440-yard distance matches 3-year-olds and up who qualified through one of 11 regions. One of the first championship qualifiers from April 18th at Sam Houston is Daytona B. This Rolando Almanza trainee set a 440-yard track record in the qualifying race by out-nodding another that made the championship, Jesse's First Down. Daytona B was the Adequan Derby winner last year. Almanza explains that this distance might not be his specialty, but he has other strengths to make up for it.
He just breaks with him. I mean, he's not the best 440 horse. But when he's right and he breaks, he's always about a length and a half ahead of everybody. Boy, is it hard to catch.
Another championship hopeful, Rockin' Disco, is a 5-year-old veteran of stakes competition and a multiple graded winner. He made it into the 440-yard championship via Remington Park's Regional on May 10th. Sign of Corona was part of a big qualifying day for the James Hansen stable on August 8th at LeBois Park. His front-running score sends him to finals night for the second year in a row after contesting the Derby in 2014. Finally, on September 6th at Emerald Downs, B.H. Lisa's boy tipped off his readiness with a fast quarter mile to establish a track record. Trained by Bill Hoberg, he's another bringing the hopes of the Northwest U.S. to Lone Star Park. An interesting note about this year's Bank of America Championship, it features the top 3 finishers and also the beaten favorite from last year's Adequan Derby at Prairie Meadows from the final event there. So a lot of horses have come back this year, and one of those horses, though, that's Derby eligible this year but chose not to run in the Adequan Derby is B.H. Lisa's boy. He's going to try this big race.
B.H. Lisa's boy really captivated my interest, and it's for 2 reasons. One, because as you mentioned, it's a dual qualifier and had the choice of going in the Derby or into the Challenge Championship. Also because it had a new track record setting a whopping 113 speed index to qualify for this race. So I'm very impressed. I think the connections must think that he travels 440 yards better than 400 yards, really finishes well. Sometimes we say kicks in the afterburners, and that way they chose to step it up to this more lucrative final.
And it was good to see Emerald Downs, a race primarily known for its thoroughbred racing, but qualify a horse for this Bank of America Championship as they did. And B.H. Lisa's boy ran very well out there over that racetrack, going 440 yards, obviously producing that time. Another horse, obviously, to talk about in this race is Daytona B. This was the horse that won the Adequan Derby final last year at Prairie Meadows, and this year is back for the championship.
Another thing I liked about Daytona B is also a track record setter. Comes into this race having set a track record with a speed index of 112. Pretty impressive. The one difference between this and B.H. Lisa's boy is that there was a head bob between first and second finishers in that race. So that tells me they covered a fast track that day.
Rather than a horse just drawing off and winning by himself.
Absolutely.
Well, there's some good contenders in that Bank of America Championship. The qualifier from here at Remington Park, where we're shooting this, Rockin' Disco, is one that merits consideration. And there's really a lot of horses in there that are going to be tough in that championship event.
Tammy Johnson has done well with a relatively small stable here in Texas, so I look for her to come into the Lone Star Park final with a well-prepared horse.
Well, certainly, as you have mentioned, coming in and peaking on November 7th, which this year is the date of the championships, very important. And I'm sure you can feel for the trainers that are in there trying to get their horses just at the absolute fine edge coming up on Saturday.
Much like Bob Baffert got American Pharoah ready for the big race at Breeders' Cup, these trainers have to have their horses peaking on this Challenge Championship night. And there's a knack to it. And that's one of the reasons why I tend to look at the trainers that have had a long and storied history with the 25-year Challenge program and follow their horses into this final.
Well, it's been a pleasure to share this time with you and get your analysis on these races, and thanks so much for joining us.
It was my honor to be here.
Well, thank you very much. That's Janet Van Beber. For her and all of us here at Raceview Network, I'm Jim Byers. Coming up on both Friday and Saturday, it's a two-day event actually, the Bank of America Challenge Championships at Lone Star Park. The 5 races that we're talking about here will be contested on Saturday in Grand Prairie, Texas. Stay with Raceview Network. We'll have the full recaps of all the racing action from Championship Weekend coming up on our next edition of this show. For all of us here at Raceview Network, I'm Jim Byers. For Janet and everyone, thanks for watching, and stay with us here on Raceview Network.
The Bank of America Racing Challenge Update, sponsored by the American Quarter Horse Association.